Welcome back to another episode of the Partnernomics Show. Today I was joined by Amy Corder. Wow, what an interesting background. So, Amy was the top general of the Civil Air Patrol. So, it's essentially she was been a civilian, but then joined the Civil Air Patrol and worked her way through the ranks, actually, as a high schooler, if I remember correctly, as a volunteer, and then worked all the way through the ranks, which took her to be able to engage in Washington, D.C., doing several different programs that she also talked about. Folks know that tune into this program. I spent 6 years in the Marines and really enjoyed my time there, but really appreciative for folks in the Civil Air Patrol and across all the branches of the military. But wow, what a fascinating background. And then she served as a C-level officer in several different organizations, from CEO in revenue spaces, strategy, marketing, sales. Just a very diverse background, but very, very interesting. And then for the last several years, she served EOS as an implementer. But a very engaging conversation, full of stories. Absolutely love this one, and I hope you do too. Here we go.
Welcome to the Partnernomics Show, where industry thought leaders discuss the hottest topics in partnerships, ecosystems, and innovation.
Welcome back to another episode of the Partnernomics Show. Great to be with you. Today we are joined by Amy Corder. I've really I really enjoyed getting to know Amy recently and connecting with her. She has one of the coolest backgrounds in the world. As everybody that follows us on the Partnernomics Show knows, that I spent some time in the military. Big lover of those that are involved in our military and other ways that, just serving our country and our people. And Amy has done that from an interesting seat that I'm wanting to learn more about, and that's through the Civil Air Patrol. But Amy, how are things going? Thanks for taking some time to chat with us today.
Well, it's a honor and privilege to be here. This is always fun. I love to share and love to listen to your angle and questions and all of that, Mark. And we should kick it off with thank you for your service as a Marine. That's fantastic. And our country doesn't isn't as amazing as it is without all of the service of our veterans and our current military. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And for your service as well. I want to just dig right into the time that you spent with the Civil Air Patrol, and let's kind of unpack that a little bit more of what that organization is. One of the folks that's in my professional network, he's a private pilot, and he's member of the Civil Air Patrol, I guess the squadron or the group that's here in Kansas City, and he was always talking about doing these different missions and helping out. And I honestly never really understood precisely what it was that he did. So I'm looking forward to learning about this.
Yeah, it's just an amazing organization. Started during World War II when people were looking out on the East Coast and could literally see the German U-boats, the submarines that were attacking the merchant marine ships. So 200 plus ships, went down with all the people and the material that was going over to Europe and all of that. And so the Civil Air Patrol formed, literally flying their own planes, strapping bombs to the bottom with chicken wire, and seeing a sub would reach out with some wire snips and let her rip, and we're credited with saving a couple of submarines, or not saving, with attacking a couple of submarines during that time. And it scared the submarine pilots away, because they used to talk about those darn little, I think they used a different word, little yellow airplanes, and they would see it. And so that's the beginnings of the Civil Air Patrol, was really a defense mission. And we are absolutely, in all these years since, non-combatant civilian auxiliary of the Air Force. So we are Air Force, airmen, warriors, but we are all about the homeland here, really, across the United States and Puerto Rico.
So what was it? I guess, like, what was kind of the beginning stages of your professional career? What was kind of the first foray, the first one or two jobs, and then how did the Civil Air Patrol make its way into your career path?
Yeah, so the crazy thing is, Civil Air Patrol was first. As a teenager, I volunteered the search and rescue. So three congressionally chartered missions: search and rescue, which includes disaster relief, emergency response, as well as cadet programs, and the aerospace education. And I'm an educator at heart, and actually by degree, and as well as some other degrees. But loved as I was a high school student getting involved, and I got trained to help, and I could, I love helping. It's probably the best thing I do, and probably the craziest thing I do, because I'm always helping. But I love that ability to go learn how to help when there's something bad happening. It could be that a plane is lost. It could be that a hunter is missing. We do that kind of work as well. It could be that a hurricane just slammed into something, or a tornado went through, which happened when I was in college, actually, in Kalamazoo, and on goes the uniform. So I loved that. And so that's actually been throughout my career something that I initially started out very much as a doer. I'd love to, be an emergency services person, and as well as learning in the aircraft as well. And then over time, as I completed college, the first couple of things I did career-wise, again, still volunteering with the Civil Air Patrol when needed, was really probably the most notable was that when I was uh, at my college, I was working on like literally computer tapes, the big tape drives, and putting the backups on. And gosh, that was so much fun. Did anybody ever say that? At 3 in the morning on Friday mornings is when I did it. So I would be sitting there slapping myself to stay awake. But I read the entire manual set, kind of crazy. I've also read all the Air Force regulations too, for relating to Civil Air Patrol. So I'm kind of crazy, but I read the manual set, and at some point, there's 7 feet of it. I knew because it was all strapped into a metal rack in the computer room. And somewhere at about a foot in, and somewhere at about 6 feet in, there were two commands that if you put them together, you could literally break the operating system. You could get in. And I don't know why I remembered, but I did. When I hit the one 6 feet into it, I was like, wait a minute, why does that have authority to? And I went back and thought, oh my goodness. The shortest story I can tell of that is that it took me days, weeks, it wasn't a month, but to get the computer manufacturer, it was not IBM, but it was the other large one, to listen to me. Because there's no email, you didn't have internet connection all over the place. So I'm calling them, and I'm sending them letters, and they told me to, go ahead and we'll write the code and send it to us. And actually, through Civil Air Patrol and some other work I did there, I had a security clearance way back as a teenager. And it was actually pre that. I did some really crazy, interesting things. So I was like, I can't. You couldn't be a white hat hacker in those days. If you hacked, you would lose your clearance. And I being very rule bound, obviously, said, no, got one of my former professors, and he spent hours with me until we could find the right person. And I said, I can do that in 5 lines of code. I told him, and he went, oh my. And they immediately globally had to change the operating system. So I never got a thank you, but I did get this mag tape that came in and said, you must apply this like immediately. And then about a month or two later, I got repeated calls from that corporation saying, you need to come and work with us. You need to come and work with us. So the first real amazing job that I had was working for that computer manufacturer, doing all kinds of things, including using my security clearance in some fun places, tuning up computer systems and things. So while that was my minor, I had education and psychology majors, computer science and math minors. That's where my career launched, and went from there to leading people globally in technology. So,
Wow, one of the original hackers. It's another thing I
yeah,
did not know about you. Wow,
yeah,
that
I was
is an amazing story.
love to be known as the unhacker. I didn't do it.
Exactly, exactly. The good side, the right side of that. Wow,
Yeah,
what technology has done with computers over the last 20, 30 plus years is absolutely amazing. So, Amy, you ended up taking a very senior role within the Civil Air Patrol, right? Leading more than 60,000 people. Tell me a little bit about that. That's a obviously massive organization.
I did. And as I was in an entrepreneurial business, and then it grew to a point, I was probably employee 100, and it grew to thousands of people. We took it public on the New York Stock Exchange. I'm leading people globally. I left there on my 20th anniversary. I just knew that, like, we had kind of exhausted the path we were on. Everybody was getting a little risk averse, and I for 10 months kind of worked through executive committee meetings saying, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave on my 20th anniversary. They all thought I was kidding. Then when they knew I wasn't, I got a lot of free lunches, by the way. So use it. It worked. But But when I left, I literally thought I want to get back to smaller business. The one that I joined when I started, right, was much smaller, and I'd been in that huge corporation. I knew what big was, and so what happened was I had already been in roles in Civil Air Patrol where I led Michigan from 1999 to 2002. So that was during 9/11. Not good timing, by the way, to be in charge of global disaster recovery for my corporation at the same time that I'm the wing commander, as it's called, for the Civil Air Patrol for 1,400 people in Michigan, because I had 2 pagers and 2 cell phones and lots of stuff happening. So what then I did was, as I left that big organization, I thought, well, I will do a little bit more with Civil Air Patrol. I literally, for the third or fourth time by then in my career, said it's time for me to really get in and do more flying and enjoy that, and get trained up on the left seat pilot work, not just the other stuff I'd done. And like every other time, as soon as I thought that, somebody called me and said, hey, I've got something you can do. So what it was a couple of calls from the Pentagon. There weren't that many women in leadership roles. So when I was the state commander in Michigan, it put me on a 67-member board with I think there was another woman or two, like that was it. And so you're visible, for good or for bad, you're visible. And I had stood up and had really talked from the floor. Someone's like, okay, thank you, Madam Stateswoman, you can sit down now. But it turned out that really was visible. So there were actually some Air Force general officers, folks in the Pentagon, who called me and said, it's time we had somebody at your stature who's really understood big organizations, who can really come in and help. And I put my hat in the ring, Mark, never thinking. I mean, when I go into something, I go all in, but I never in my wildest dreams thought that I would become at a point the national commander of the Civil Air Patrol in 2007, when there'd never been a woman in the ranks at that point. So I put my hat in the ring. I got the position, and just kept going from there. So ended up leading 61,000 people from 2007 to 2011. We are credited with saving over 100 lives each year, over 400 people. We don't claim that. The other people say we do. So the Air Force says, had you not been there, they would have perished. All that takes is talk about mission alignment. Folks, this is why we do all of our safety training. This is why we stay up to date on the regulations. This is why we do what we do. This is why we train our cadets, because they're part of our missions on the ground as well. So anyway, I got to use everything I knew about leading and managing, and I had just come off a great tenure of 1,000 projects, 99% on time, on budget, and technology. So I got to translate that to something very different, but something that I knew and was near and dear to my heart, helping, saving lives, and making great citizens in America. And so I ended up starting that role with probably 55,000 personnel. And much like we do in EOS, anybody that's familiar with the entrepreneurial operating system, we think about right people, right seats. So I moved the staff that usually would end up being exactly all the best friends of whoever's in charge. I said across the nation, hey, I need you all. I need the best. I need you all to submit for applications. There are no positions filled in any of the staff, and that's dozens of people. I said, I need you to put your hat in the ring. And then I got a guy that I knew, but again, not my best friend in life, just somebody that I really knew and respected. And I said, I need you to be my chief of staff, and I need you to oversee this process. And here's how we're going to interview. And I still remember he got a team, got a board, came back to me, because you have to do this quickly, right? Because otherwise the rest of the staff is still kind of doing what they can do. And he came back and he said, ma'am, there's a problem. And I said, uh-oh, what's the problem? And he said, so you know how you said you wanted people from across the nation? Well, that everybody always says that, but they don't mean that. So people haven't applied. I said, you've got to be kidding. So I made this big plea across the nation. I'm not kidding. I need you to apply. And then I made individual calls and, talked to some of the leaders to get their, I'm serious. So then he came back, and this was all happening just in weeks. And he came back and he said, ma'am, there's a problem. And I said, what's the problem now? And he said, you know how you said you wanted people across the nation? Well, I looked across our 8 regions, and the only one that's underrepresented is your own. He said, because all of those folks said, hey, this is about meritocracy. This isn't about Amy's buddies. And so some of, my best friends were great people and great officers and could fill terrific roles. So I had to make a third call to now the local people who were all really good about it. They weren't like mad or anything. They just were like, no, we were leaving room. Ma'am, you asked us to do that. So anyway, great opportunity to build an organization, get the right people in the right seats. We quadrupled the safety rating over the time I was there. Because unfortunately, you inherit culture takes a while to switch, as you know. I inherited a culture that was a little bit looser than potentially should have been. So I can tell you, I've spoken at Edwards Air Force Base in front of hundreds of people, but unfortunately, it was a eulogy. And
Oh,
after that, I said, I don't need to be doing this anymore. And that wasn't the first, but it was the last. And so I dug in, hired some really great people, went to folks like Delta Airlines. It's all about partners, right? And so I built a lot of partnerships during that time and had people come in and assist us. And we became my Air Force senior advisor told me, you have created the safest organization of any single engine aircraft fleet in the world, even more so than the U.S. Air Force itself, because they have a single engine fleet. Basically, you can take a plane and fly it just for fun. We're flying it usually during somebody's missing. That's usually the weather's not great or something, right? So we often flying under adverse conditions, and they go and fly when it's beautiful out, and we even surpass that. So we got some great great accolades from safety, and flight safety gave us an award. I went to pick it up, and as well as we got a World Peace Prize organization for some of the work we did in saving lives and helping. So amazing opportunity. I was blessed to be there. I also don't think I slept for 4 years. But I got to use everything that I've always said and done, just at a different scale. And what I love, Mark, is that it scales up and it scales down, because I also am owner and co-owner in some small businesses as well. So I love that, I can make those translations just easily. In fact, I once had somebody, public affairs officer in Civil Air Patrol, said, ma'am, I figured it out. You're helping run CAP like a business now. And I said, oh my gosh, don't tell anybody. They're not going to like that. But
yeah, no doubt, no
I,
doubt.
we had statistics and everything. We knew what we needed to do, and people got it done.
Well, I am so jealous because you got to meet one of my somebody that I just hold in such high regard, and that is General Colin Powell. I'm a Marine. He's an Army. We call him Army dogs. He's an Army dog, but man, I love so many of his quotes. I think he's a spectacular leader. Just a true sense of the word. You got to tell me the story. How did you have an opportunity to meet General Powell?
Well, that was awesome, and I feel the same way. And actually, I just ran across again on the back of my business cards for Civil Air Patrol when I was vying for that top position. I had the 10 rules of Colin Powell on the back of them. Like you don't let your ego get too close to your position, because when one fails, so does the other. I mean, just I love he's just an amazing guy. Well, yeah, so it was actually between running the state in Michigan, so somewhere it was just finished that. So it was about 2002. And I did not want to step into like a region commander role or anything. I'd kind of done that, and I was focusing a little bit back on my career, and I got asked to develop a program in Washington D.C. For some of the top cadets in the nation, and they wanted to focus it around the legislative branch of the government, and I knew I think I could see through that, which was basically, well, we report to Congress, so we have to take an annual report to give it to Congress, and I think some of the old legs didn't want to walk around the halls of Congress and hand those out. And they thought, hey, if we take cadets there, they can go do this. So I think some of that was true. Anyway, I said, if we're going to create a program, we should create it around all three branches of government, because the balance of that is what's made America great. And so being able to be in a position where we're thinking about the legislative piece, but what if they get a chance to learn the executive branch and as well, and the judicial branch as well. Although I remember thinking, I don't know how I'm going to pull this off. And so I literally got funded from the floor of a board meeting. They pulled me in. I was doing something else. I got dragged down the hallway and and pulled in. And they said, "Oh my gosh, yes, you go do that." And so I was excited. I worked with actually a Superior Court judge from the state of California. That's how I was going to figure out how to get into the judicial side. And I worked with one of our staff members at headquarters at Maxwell Air Force Base in Alabama. And the three of us wrote the curriculum for a week-long program, but it needed to be when the legislature was in. Unfortunately, that's also when students are in school. And so we had to figure out how to get some of the top cadets out of school. Like, we chose 24 cadets. And so we went after the Secondary School Principals Association, who said, well, yes, we do credentialing, and then when we do that, professors and teachers, certainly will allow them to be out of their classrooms. But got to tell you, until you run it, we don't do that. And I said, well, got to tell you, I can't run it until you help me. So I sent them our curriculum, and it came back certified, first shot, didn't change a thing. Got to use a little bit of my education degree in there, and a little bit of psychology and marketing, I think, but literally got it all approved. So that program, in that 1 week, the first time we did it in 2002, we did it fast, was Colin Powell was the Secretary of State, and that was representing that portion. And I still can't believe that morning. I remember getting up at 4 a.m. in DC. Actually, we're probably in Arlington, Virginia, picking up the paper outside my hotel room door, and it said Haiti, blah, blah, blah. And all I read after that was, in my mind, Secretary Powell is going to be pretty busy today. But I was supposed to get time with him in his office as well as time with the cadets. So we pursued it. I checked in with his many assistants, and they said, well, ma'am, we don't know yet. He's been called to the White House. Of course he has. And so we went to the treaty room in the State Department, got to be in there on the parquet floors, and they kind of told us how we're going to stand, and we'll do a photo op regardless. We'll see what happens if he can join you. And then they looked at all of us in our blue uniforms. We wear the Air Force uniforms, just with some differences on the epaulets and et cetera. And they looked at all of us and said, because we're waiting for a long time, and they said, I bet we can let you go, and you would all be able to come back right to this spot, right? And I said, yep. And I got all the cadets, to look down. Here's what you're going to do. You've got to get back to that spot and I asked them how long, 15 seconds. We got it. Thank you. So then they came out and said, well, he's supposed to be heading to the White House right now. He didn't want to miss you. We're going to do at least a photo. And I went to meet him at the door. And as he came in, I knew how many seconds it took us to cross the room. Secretary Powell, thank you so much for your time. I want to let you know we brought the top cadets from Civil Air Patrol, your Air Force Auxiliary, and out of the top 28,000, I have 24 here today. They represent 24 different states, but we have patches to give to you from all of the states, because I knew he was a patch collector. And and so I went through all of that, and he sat down, took the photo, stood up, and spent the next like 20 minutes talking to cadets. Where are you from, cadet? Kansas. Well, awesome. That's great. Tell me something about, blah, 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 that you love. And he engaged with them in ways that none of us ever expected. And so just a really great opportunity. We also met with the CIA director, Porter Goss. He actually coined all of us, so a very cool experience. And we were all surprised by that. Again, we were supposed to get 2 minutes. We got 20 or more, and I had the same speech on the way across the floor. And I had him help me promote one of his special agents who was getting a promotion in Civil Air Patrol. So that's how he just loved that. He was awesome at that. And then of course met with many in the legislature. Met with Justice Scalia, and Justice Scalia tossed me and the other adults, the other escorts or chaperones, out of the room. So I'm never sure what happened. But but really, and I got to tell you, those cadets, some of them, the goal in Civil Air Patrol wasn't just to create pilots in the Air Force or Marines, et cetera. It's really just to create great citizens. And so some of them did go out off to be supportive in all kinds of different roles across all of that. So it was just really
Oh, what an
again,
amazing
I love
experience
doing it.
for
Yeah.
those young cadets. I mean, it's obviously something that they will never forget, especially if they understand just the brevity of what they had an opportunity to experience.
Absolutely, I have an awesome photo of me shaking Secretary Powell's hand at the door. That my brother, who was a Air Force veteran, he enlisted and went to Vietnam, and he always calls that picture the "Hey, who's that shaking my sister's hand?" So,
That is awesome.
yeah.
Excellent. Well, Amy, I want to shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about EOS, and let's talk about businesses and making businesses better and applying a lot of your experiences from the corporate side, from the government side, and putting that into business. We know that one of the 6 components of the EOS system is talking about issues. And oftentimes I know that whenever we're working with clients, that's really where the rubber meets the road and where we can make some improvements. But it can also be a bit of a tricky area to be talking through as well, and how we do that. I'd love to just get your insights as you work with clients. How should we think about issues, and then how do we think about the process of raising issues and doing it in a very collaborative format, so that it doesn't become a blame game?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it is really such a, I would say, just kind of hinge pin to how EOS works. People think about vision and traction and team health, but all of that is really embodied in the way in which we raise and solve issues. And yeah, so for me, in terms of raising them, once we have a shared vision, shared by all, not just shared on all, and we have the right people in the right seats, and we have the data that tells us what we should expect, that should create what we call a transparent organization. So being able then for the person to raise their hand and share the issues as they come in. I often say it's kind of like a fine wine. You don't want to drink it before it's time. You don't want to solve an issue before it's time either. Often in business, some organizations will say, "Oh, I don't need that. We're really good at solving all our issues. We don't have any issues on the list." And I'll always say, "I'm sorry." Because you should have some things on the list. So issues being, we normalize that word, meaning that it's not just bad stuff like uh-ohs. It's also like great opportunities. One of your competitors goes out of business, and you could say, what a great opportunity. Or you could say, hey, it's an issue. We need to solve this, because we still need to solve it to take action to figure out how we can help that organization depart well, and how we can help their clientele not fall on their faces, right? And really step in. That's still something to be solved. And so the way in which we do it is really important. And there is a specific methodology that we use. We call it IDS, meaning we identify to the root or roots. So any Six Sigma folks out there like me, it's root cause analysis. We think we know what it is. That's really a symptom. Then we think we know what that is. Still a symptom. And usually we have to dig in about 5 levels to really get to the core of what an issue we're really trying to solve is. And then we talk about having traction with EOS. Well, we need to have traction. We need to know that somebody's going to take it, as we figure out what it's going to be, that they're going to take it and run with it. So first identify all the roots, then we discuss, and then move usually quickly to solving. And we solve with that traction, with saying somebody's taking a to-do or multiple to-dos or tasks to actually make the solution. And our worlds are pretty complex. We're often complexifying. I almost say the smarter we are, the more we complexify, the less we simplify. And simplification is really where it's at. That's what we need to do. It's the first of the leadership abilities. That if we simplify, then that gives us the ability to break those apart. So often when I see teams that say, well, our issues are too complex, we can't solve it with this silly identify, then discuss and solve. And I say, no, let's dig in. And what we find is it's actually multiple issues. And it's because everything that sounded like it, looked like it, smelled like it, we shoved all together instead of pulling it apart so that we can actually take bite-sized chunks and get it done, and get it done fast. So those are some of the things that I would say. And then I think just to get people to make sure they're always being that open and honest and sharing with us. In fact, I wrote a blog about this, that it's not the blame and shame show. I literally tell my teams, just tell them it's not the blame and shame show. That's not why we're here. So when someone starts saying, well, here's where we're at, but the sun was in my eyes, my shoes were untied. I always say, oh, that sounds like an issue. Let's get it on the list. It's okay. And then when we go to solve it, when we've prioritized to solve it, then I say, remember, this isn't the blame and shame show. You don't need to do that. I love you. You're part of the team. You're a right person in the right seat. It's okay. I want us to focus on how we're going to solve it, because the more defensive we are, the less we can actually move to getting it solved. So I always say it's not the blame and shame show. It's all about identifying and solving. And I think as I've kind of crafted that and have my teams using that, I see that they've got better issues, more, it may be difficult, but, more deeper issues on their list, and they're solving.
Yeah. I mean, how do we, I'm curious to kind of pick your brain on this one. How do we, it's almost like separating egos and emotions and like attachment to different, maybe an issue is a product or a feature or something that has been somebody's project for so long. And maybe there's just kind of a cultural thing, right? And just a leadership thing. But what are some insights or maybe some suggestions you would have for leaders that are out there of just how do we separate ourselves where we don't have the attachment, where we're just focused on growing the business and doing what's best for the business and not taking it personal if somebody says our product is underperforming or our feature shouldn't be put in this feature set. How do we work through that?
Yeah, I think, it's with great communication and support, and quite frankly, love. I have had to say at times in the room, hey, sometimes what propels us forward is a fear, right? Like, so it may be what we don't raise as an issue because we're kind of covering it up. And, if anybody's ever had that go really well, let me know. Because it doesn't. Over time, those things start stinking. And now your issue is more complex. And now your issue is harder to fix. And now it's got, more damage that's been done. So a lot of it is really thinking about, instead of coming in, based in fear, it's really thinking. And so sometimes I'll say, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen if you raise the thought that's on your mind? I can see it because I see your brow being furrowed. So, what's the worst thing that can happen? We're all a team here. And really getting, again, it's back to that. You need the vision, traction, and health, to team health to get us there. So really having people think about, the fact that we're there all aligned for the same reason and same mission and same. And so, being able to trust one another to share. I often, we talk about being able to and willing to be vulnerable with the team around you. And that's hard, but I can tell you, and as zipping back to Civil Air Patrol for a minute, the Major General. I am the highest level person in the whole organization. I grew it to over 61,000 right people, right seats, and I could have barked an order across the field. I could have told people to just go do, and instead it was all about getting people's hearts and minds wrapped into saving lives. Whether it was that person who went out and got lost and fell out of the sky and bad things happen, or that they may not even like if they met them, to a cadet, a young person who we saved their life because they now have something they're going to do with it. That's amazing. We pulled them out of whether they could have gone down the wrong path with, drugs or friends or whatever. Like, we save lives, and we can't count all of them, but we can at least count the ones that, had an urgent, emergent need. But that ability for us to think, I would say I had absolutely the authority and responsibility to tell people what to do. And instead, what I did was I asked them how we should solve it together. And if that made me weak, I'll take it out every day of the year, because that's not weak. It takes more strength to be brave, to listen to the things that aren't what you thought. So when I started asking at first for feedback, and I get, oh, General, you're awesome. No, thanks much. But I literally would say, I don't need yes men. Please, until you can tell me something that we can fix. And that's actually how we fixed a lot of the safety issues, were to really dig to the point where it's like, nope, that's not good enough. We're not safe enough. So nobody, fell out of the sky today for us, but that doesn't matter. We've got to be prepared. So all that to say, it really is about making people feel and know that what you're really trying to do is to solve the issues, to get to, be our best, is kind of the way I always talk about it. We can't be our best as an organization, as a department, as a leader, as a contributor, until we can really let that go. So as it's and believe me, we all need egos. If we didn't have egos, we'd be slithering around the bottom of the ocean, like, right? So we need to have some ego to step up and learn and grow, but we need to know when we need to step back and say, it's okay, I need to hear this. Somebody loves me enough. It's kind of like the Hallmark commercial, care enough to give you the very best feedback, or feed forward, as I sometimes call it.
Oh man, it's great insights and great words of wisdom to live by. Well, Amy, I don't want to keep you too much. I know you're super busy, but I certainly appreciate you carving out some time to speak with us today, to share your insights, to share your background. I'm just fascinated by it. But thank you so much for doing that for us today.
Well, thank you, Mark. This has been awesome. I love, thinking at this level and being able to share. We're, continue to make great strides forward for anybody that's out there. And I'll be sending you a challenge coin. I think next year I could have put it in your hand, but I'll send you one. I've got my flag on one side and EOS on the other. I think it took I don't think Congress had to approve it, but it took a bit to get approved. But I'll get you one. It's pretty fun.
Oh man, that's awesome. It'd be an honor to get it. Thank
You
you,
got
Amy.
it.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Partnernomics Show.